Hello, Matt.
Hi, Sophie.
How are you?
Great.
So today we are planned to talk about education and how it can end poverty in Japan, right?
Yep.
We finished our last class talking about education as a commercial transaction and established that it was one of the values of education. So could you explain again what we mean by education as a commercial transaction?
Sure. Basically, the idea is with education as a commercial transaction, you're buying a diploma, and that diploma is a license to get a good job. And so, with that diploma, you get a job that pays a decent salary, and that's for some the purpose of education.
So I found this image to try to summarize the idea. Right? So you give money, you get a diploma, and hopefully later on, because of that diploma, you get a good salary.
Exactly.
With education, you can get a good job. So obviously, there's a connection, right, for low-income students. If you have education, it means you can have a good salary, so that means your situation will get better.
Basically, they see education as a way out of poverty. So, those who are in a low income situation are more likely to be motivated to get that education. And Nicholas D. Kristof in 2011 was quoted as saying, "Education is the escalator out of poverty." And he's someone who specialized in education in developing countries and wrote a book along with his wife. The book is called Half the Sky, and it's actually turned into a film as well. And it looks at how educating women in particular in developing countries can really change the situations.
Exactly. But so today, right, we're not focusing on developing countries, right? We're focusing on a developed country, Japan, and it's interesting because it works the same way.
Very true. So the same concepts that apply to developing countries, we still have situations in developed countries where people in poverty can be helped out of it through education. A good example being both the U.S., another example, Japan. So in the U.S., if you look at the diagram we have, basically it shows the tiers of income, that how it increases along with education when you look at average, incomes. Of course, you have outliers, people who do well without getting educations, but in general, looking at the broader populations, there's a huge increase in income as you move along from high school graduate to a college graduate, right, and then to someone with a postgraduate degree.
And for me, see what strikes me is the unemployment rate, right? With less than high school, it's 15%, and then with a university or higher, it's only 5%. So that means a lot too for me.
Yeah, and that's important because when economies go bad and jobs are lost, people with education can adapt and find jobs in other fields. Whereas if you're only skilled in one area and you don't have an education, it's less likely they will hire you and train you in that new field.
Exactly. So, the example for Japan, and I wanted to thank you for doing all the research for this video, shocked me because in Japan it's because of the cost of education that access to education is limited to families with higher income. So from the data you collected, we made a chart, right, that summarizes the cost of education in Japan. So
Yes.
could you explain it?
Right. Well, people often think that in developed countries education is free because of public education. However, when you look into other elements of education, for example, in Japan there's a lot of money spent on cram schools so that children can get support and do well in school. Education fees such as uniforms or lunches, and those things really add up. So free education is not really free. Yeah. and you can see how in our chart we look at the difference between a public education and a private education, the amount of money spent, and what really makes a huge difference is the parents having the money to send children to cram schools.
Yeah, right, from junior high school on, that make it... It's actually almost unbelievable for me to look at this. And now I'm very curious to look into France, because we have free education, so I wonder what the costs are really, right? Because the concept, it's free, but in reality, how much are we paying? Because the private sector is almost non-existent. It's all public. So for me, it really struck me when I saw this. I mean, 500,000 for 1 year of high school in the public and double in the private. It just seems unbelievably expensive.
Yeah. So, in addition, so as this cost of education creates this separation or barrier between low income and higher income families, that's what we call an educational divide. You have the haves and the have-nots. And then two consequences that follow from this.
Yeah, there are probably more, but that's the two we decided to focus on, right?
Yes. So the first consequence is Japan's relative poverty rate being fourth highest. And of the OECD countries, Japan is only better than Mexico, Turkey, and the United States. And yeah, I'm from the United States. A lot of people might be surprised, but yes, we have a huge problem with poverty in the United States.
Right. And so could you explain what relative poverty rate means?
Sure. Relative poverty basically means that you take the median income of a population, and if people are making less than half of that, then they're living in poverty because the amount of income, it's relative to the country you're living in those situations. So can you afford to buy food in that country? Can you afford the transportation in that country? And that's why a good base is what the median income is. And if you're not making half the median income, then you're probably really having trouble buying, daily goods.
Daily goods, yeah, for everyday life. So we did find a number for 2012.
Yeah, so basically 2012 the median income was 4.32 million yen, and so if anyone was making less than half of that, the 2.16 million, then they were in relative poverty. And that's less than 20,000 a year.
Yes, $20,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
That is low. And that, so from the data, it means that 16% of Japanese live with less than 2.16 million yen a year, which I had never even thought about. So
there are actually a lot of books out about how to survive on less than that now
really?
in Japan.
Oh, wow, okay.
So just to give you some idea, here's a chart showing the relative poverty rates. And as we mentioned in an earlier slide, Japan is only better than the United States, Turkey, and Mexico. And all those other countries in the OECD have been found to have a smaller percentages of people living in relative poverty.
I'm actually breathing
Very much easier
because I just saw Friends, and it is making me feel a little better right now. It's kind of higher up, right?
So the second consequence of this is that the children in Japan, 1 in 6 children in Japan, are poor. Okay, and unfortunately that's the highest level since there have been records kept about relative poverty in Japan.
Since 1985, we haven't been getting better about it, right? We've been getting worse.
And you'd think we'd be striving to make the world better for everyone. So why is the percentage of relative poverty increasing?
Exactly. And obviously today we're looking at one aspect, which is the cost of education.
Yeah. So in Japan, an expensive education means that 90% of children from poor families go to high school, which doesn't sound bad, but that's compared to 98.4% of the general population.
And that means is that 10% of poor children have to find a job with only a junior high school diploma, and we found data on that, what that means, right?
Right. So how does that affect overall salary for people who start working right out of junior high school? For example, for men, 26% below average salary if all they have is junior high school education.
Right. And so the average salary was calculated based on high school education. So it's not even a very high level of education for Japan, right? How about women?
Women, they're 28% below average salary, so even worse.
Exactly.
So in either case, if they didn't graduate from high school, they're probably going to be living in relative poverty.
Exactly.
So low salary and welfare. Welfare is when you're provided money or financial assistance through the government when your salary is below average. Which, it's nice that governments provide welfare, but the reality is that those on welfare are more likely to pass that poverty on to the next generation, and their lack of qualification, means that they struggle to earn enough to help educate their own children and put them through cram schools or provide the money for the field trips or what have you. So it just
goes round
and round. So one support of this idea of the vicious cycle is a study done in Sakai, not in Nagoya Sakai, but Sakai, Osaka Prefecture. And it found that 25% of children who grew up in low-income families, which were on welfare, later on in their own lives ended up on welfare as well.
And that's it's a quarter, right, of those children.
Yeah. So yes, poverty, a vicious circle or cycle that really one of the only ways to break it is education. And you found a nice diagram that kind of shows how this cycle works. You got the parents with the low income, children unable to receive decent education or the educational support that helps them succeed in the educational environment, which they end up dropping out or taking jobs very limited for opportunities. They're unable to get high-paying jobs or switch over when the economy's bad, and then their children would also suffer from poverty.
Exactly. It goes round and round and round. Whereas, if you do get education, you have a chance to make a decent living, even a good living, right? So get above high school education for salary. In the case of Japan means with a university education. The salary for a man is 44% above the average salary, so above the salary of someone with only a high school education. Women, it makes an even bigger difference, it's 60% above the average salary.
That's huge.
Isn't it? I was pretty amazed when I saw these numbers.
So, only 20% of low-income students go to university.
Which means that only 20% of the low-income population are likely to get out of poverty every year.
And that means really there should be actions taken to stop this cycle.
Exactly, right? To make sure that more than 20% of low-income population get out of poverty every year. So we have two, how we would say that, two hopes, right, for this to happen.
Well, yeah, kind of a silver lining is the government is aware of this, and they've passed a law in 2013 asking for a blueprint or a plan to help the poor. And the plan does include providing more social workers in schools to help identify students in need and give them assistance, and also giving free after-school tuition or assistance to the struggling students. However, we're still waiting to see if the plan actually succeeds and what the results are.
Exactly. On the much brighter side, we found a non-profit organization, an NPO called Kids Store.
Yeah, and this is something in Tokyo where university students offer free after-school lessons to junior high school students who are at a financial disadvantage. And yeah, like I said, the lessons are taught by volunteer university students.
And both Matt and I had the same reaction. Ooh, it looks like Tokyo! So maybe there's something to be done also in Nagoya, right?
Exactly.
Not just in Tokyo.
Yeah, and the good news is already they have results showing that over 90% of the students taking these lessons through Kids Door passed their high school entrance tests. So these students are more likely to find a job with at least an average income if they make it through high school. And they also can consider going to university, which struggling through junior high school, you make it to high school, that success builds on success. So with that positive reinforcement, hopefully they'll keep going. So it's possible they'll have a very significant increase in their future salaries. And that's why, again, we see this whole point about education and poverty. It's true for Japan just like everywhere else. So, you look at the way to break the cycle of poverty, and it really is this idea that junior high school students with financial disadvantage need to be helped actually anywhere along the line, elementary, anywhere along there, if they can be supported so that they get a good education, succeed academically, get better jobs, contribute to society, and for themselves to have that financial independence.
And not have their own children in the same situation, right?
Exactly.
Have an escape.
This is just a nice screenshot of the website, so maybe you can, students, if you'd like to check it out and then see about whether they're expanding to other parts of Japan.
That'd be great. And actually the video, even though I don't understand Japanese, was very positive and uplifting, so I do recommend people to watch it.
Especially if fourth year, if you're only going to have one class at university, you could really use some of that time maybe to donate some of your time to help educate children. I think it'd be very rewarding for you.
So, in conclusion, we saw that education is a way to get more money when your financial situation is pretty good. But also, education is a way to get out of poverty and hopefully make a decent life for yourself and your family when you've been struggling with money.
So education matters. Nice mat, right, for me, yeah? Whichever way you look at it. However, I do think, well, maybe we shouldn't go there, but students do get into financial debt sometimes, and that's another thing we need to look at, how to prevent financial aid turning into financial debt.
Exactly. So that's why for me I think the main issue is the cost of education. It's not just helping people pay for it, but actually reducing it. Right? So you'll see here the references for what we've just discussed. And also we wanted to point out that if you turn the page, you will see that there is a text version of what you just listened to. And this is just to help those of you who are better with reading the material instead of just listening to it and seeing it on slides. This concludes the first part about the impact of education, and we would like to move away from just the financial aspect. I hope you understand we recognize the importance of that, but there is another aspect that we want to focus on, which is education to open your mind.
Home.
That was funny.
Thanks.
So beyond the financial aspect, we do strongly believe in the idea that education is a way to become better human beings.
Exactly.
And how that happens from our own experience and the experience of many more people. Education opens your mind to new ideas and feelings, right? And we're both Mathew and I are big readers, so we'll show you in the coming weeks what we mean by this, right? The new ideas and feelings. And Matt read a book by how do you say his name?
Seth Godin.
Thank you. And he has actually a great description of university education, so we'd like to share it with you so that you understand where we're going with this.
Right. In 2012, he stated, "College started as a community of masters and scholars. It was a refuge. It was a place you went to get lost in ideas, to discover and wander, and to plot a course as an academic." I still think that's what we want. You know, we want to get you to get lost in ideas, discover, and the more I read about successful people in society, or well, especially successful business people, a lot of them dropped out of university, but it was because they got lost in ideas. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs, they were getting lost in their own ideas, exploring, wandering, and then they took their ideas when they had passion and made them realities.
So yes, through our class we hope to help you get lost in ideas like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg.
But we'd like you to keep coming to class, unlike Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg.
Exactly. So get lost in ideas, and also we will do our best to help you discover the world. Mm-hmm. And I think when you discover the world, you also discover who you are.
Yes. So
yes, definitely for us, university is not the spring vacation of life. It is not.
大学は人生の春休み
Yes.
ではありません。
Exactly. For us, the wish we have for this class is for your mind to grow stronger, not to take a vacation. And we'd like to give you an idea of how we do it for ourselves, because please remember that we're not just teaching the good words, but we are actually doing it ourselves. So one thing that both Matt and I do is to make our mind stronger. We develop our curiosity. And for this, we've been greatly inspired by Leonardo da Vinci and how he nurtured his curiosity, so how he developed his curiosity. So we have a checklist to share with you. We didn't come up with that checklist. It comes from a great book that Matt bought for $1, I think, in Boston.
Yeah.
So the book is How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci, and you can see the list on the right side. And it's a self-assessment, so do you do it? So if you're doing it, then you can make a little check mark. And the list is in your booklet as well. So hopefully when you read it, you'll find something you're already doing or you've been thinking of doing, and that will motivate you to really start doing it. Curiosity is a great way to develop your mind. And for that also, the second task for this week flipped activities, you can read on page 17 at the bottom and then page 18. We would like you to consider what education is for you, right? We started discussing it in class. We want you to go deeper with that. So using what we've shared and going deeper, and to help you go deeper, on the website we have posted several TED Talks about education that you might want to watch. I said might because you don't have to, right? You may already have your own ideas and you don't want to be influenced by what others are saying. But if you need to be inspired, well, you can watch all of them or only a few. Or as I said, you don't have to watch any of them. The goal is for you to define what education is and be able to explain your point of view in our next class. The references for this little part of the video are right here. And this is the end of our flipped activities. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Sophie.
We'll see you later.